Welcome to the Bloom and Well podcast. I'm your host, Dr. McKenzy, a functional wellness chiropractor specializing in gut, brain, and hormone health. Join me as we explore natural methods for health and wellness, focusing on regulating your nervous system, nurturing your gut-brain axis, exploring the mind-body connection, and getting to the root cause of your chronic illness. Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Bloom and Well podcast, 7 reasons why you are stuck in survival mode. Today, we're going to chat about behaviors and habits that are keeping your nervous system stuck in a dysregulated state and stuck in that survival mode, also known as fight or flight. So before we dive in, I want to discuss more about your nervous system. A lot of the time, we are under so much stress and our nervous systems and our bodies get stuck in this fight or flight mode, aka survival mode. Your primal part of your brain, the limbic system, is what is actually responsible for turning on that fight or flight mode. And one thing to remember is that your fight or flight mode is either activated or deactivated. It has an on-off switch. There is no dial to say, well, it's kind of activated. I'm kind of stressed today. Either it is engaged and your body and brain are in survival mode, or it's not. It's in that rest and digest state. So when we're actually able to relax and breathe and shift our mind and our nervous system out of this fight or flight mode, we start to move into that rest and digest state where our bodies can relax and digest all of the food we're eating and really be able to use those nutrients to heal our bodies and to fuel our bodies. So when we're stuck in that survival mode state, it can really eat away at our nutrients faster because our body is working harder and it starts to slow down tissue repair and slow down the healing process when it is stuck in that fight or flight state. So let's discuss 7 habits and behaviors that are keeping you stuck in that fight or flight survival mode. Number 1, caffeine. Caffeine addictions are real, guys. It was a tough habit for me to kick a long time ago. But caffeine is something that will keep your nervous system on high alert. It will keep your adrenaline pumping and it will keep your body really stressed out. Caffeine can increase your anxiety even hours after intake. Not only that, it can cause you to underperform at work or school. It can elevate your blood sugar levels, your heart rate, your blood pressure. It can make it difficult to fall asleep at night, or even more difficult to stay asleep and get that quality rest that your body needs. Or if you're familiar with the term adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction, caffeine can actually contribute to both of those as well. So a good substitute would be to maybe supplement with decaf coffee or half calf coffee until you can wean off of caffeine, or maybe to substitute with an herbal tea or something that just has less caffeine. Number 2 is late nights. Our bodies are actually controlled by both hormones and our nervous system. They work together in order to help our brain function and control the rest of our body, all of our organs and our tissues. All of these hormones and our nervous system run on a clock and function in cycles, and this is called your circadian rhythm. This circadian rhythm is what actually tells your body when to wake up, when to fall asleep, when do you need more energy, or when can you be in that rest and digest state. So when this internal clock is disrupted by staying up late at night or having an irregular sleep pattern, not going to bed around the same time every night, it can really stress your brain and your body even more and push it into that chronic fight or flight state, that survival mode. And trying to help your body get more rest and get out of that fight or flight state can be accomplished by developing a sleep routine. Have a sleep time, have a regular sleep time where you're going to bed at the same time or close to the same time every night. Can really help to regulate your nervous system and get yourself out of that survival mode. And if you're having trouble falling asleep at night, one way that you can encourage your body to fall asleep is by actually developing a sleep schedule. So one way to support your nervous system and help improve your quality of sleep is to have a sleep routine. So go through the same motions every night before bed around the same time. It will train your body by training your nervous system and training your hormones and that circadian rhythm to start making those sleepy hormones and sleepy chemicals in the brain and in the body that promote relaxation and promote rest and help you fall asleep easier and stay asleep better. Number 3, we have doom scrolling. Now, doom scrolling is usually when you are taking in a lot of short form content for very extended periods of time. So scrolling through social media like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts for hours upon hours. And it's usually when you're consuming very negative or very stressful content, something that is there to create suspense and create adrenaline and is really meant to move your emotions very strongly. You see a lot of polarized videos that are, like political videos or news related videos or very emotional videos that are there to make you feel something strongly and there to create that sense of urgency. It turns on the survival mode, right? This actually reinforces a negative mindset and that pessimistic outlook on life and traps you in a cycle of negative thinking patterns. And as we talked about in last week's episode, those negative thought patterns are enough to trigger fight or flight mode. And that can trigger inflammatory responses and build chronic inflammation over time, right? Which chronic inflammation we've talked about leads to chronic illness and disease. It literally tricks your brain. It tricks that primal part of the brain into thinking that a predator is chasing you like a tiger. And it sets off this state of hyperarousal and leads to you feeling anxious and restless and on edge and very nervous. And it's very uncomfortable, right? Being stuck in that survival mode. So maybe setting a timer and limiting your social media usage or limiting your short form content each day is a good way to really help support a healthy nervous system, right? Number 4, we have scary movies. Now, scary movies function just like the doom scrolling we talked about previously. They trigger the amygdala or the limbic system. I used to binge watch 80s slasher movies all the time when I was a kid, and they kept me so intrigued and there was so much suspense. I was sitting on the edge of my seat the whole time, right? Waiting for the next thing. And it kept me hooked on this adrenaline. I was getting adrenaline rush after adrenaline rush every time the music would get really loud and suspenseful, and then bam, something would happen on screen. Those frequent adrenaline spikes actually can lead to crashes due to overstimulation. You may not feel it at the time, but over time, if your body is not able to handle that amount of stress, it can definitely push your nervous system towards a more dysregulated state. So the limbic system in our brain can't necessarily tell what is a real physical threat in our world and what is an imagined threat. So that has to go with your thoughts too. Like I had talked about last week, when you're replaying a negative traumatic experience in your head, the primal part of your brain can't tell the difference as to whether that is a memory or real. It will create a chemical cascade as if it is happening in real time in front of you. And that's how movies work, right? Movies aren't real, but they trigger that primal part of the brain, and that primal part of the brain reacts as if it's happening in front of you. I don't necessarily think that watching scary movies has to be something that you cut out of your life entirely. If your body's already in a stressed state and your body's stuck in that fight or flight mode day after day, maybe try switching up your content, and instead of watching, a bunch of scary movies over the weekend, maybe watch something funny like a comedy or like a rom-com or something really lighthearted, like a children's movie, like something animated and more gentle. Not Disney movies, because Disney movies always have some really sad, traumatic plot point that just breaks my heart and makes me cry. But something that's very uplifting and happy and not so stressful throughout the entire movie. All right, number 5, we have watching the news. Watching the news, yes, is something that can dysregulate your nervous system and push it more into that survival mode. And it's really created to do that, right? The news tends to take the most stressful angles on subjects and give very clickbaity titles in order for you to pay attention, to keep you watching. This isn't to say what they're talking about isn't happening, but they often prioritize showing you the most stressful and catastrophic stories so that you're engaged in their content and you are constantly watching. They get you hooked with adrenaline. Research is actually showing that when you watch the news very frequently, very often, it can actually dampen your mood and give you more of a pessimistic outlook on life, making you feel very anxious all of the time. It can contribute to depression. So if you're looking to really supply your brain and your body with adequate rest and giving it the opportunity to recharge, maybe pulling back the time that you spend watching the news. That doesn't mean you can never watch the news again, but maybe cutting back for now or limiting it to an hour or 30 minutes a day could be really beneficial for giving your body the space it needs to heal. Number 6, we have pushing past your limits. So I am all about having a growth mindset and learning to push yourself. But when we push ourselves beyond our limits, we tend to push ourselves towards burnout. And that takes a toll on our nervous system and our bodies and can really dysregulate the nervous system, our circadian rhythm, our HP axis, all of that, and lead to things like chronic inflammation and chronic illness. So our nervous systems actually have this thing called a window of tolerance, where we have this window where we are comfortable and then we become either overstimulated when we're over that threshold or understimulated when we are under that threshold. And our nervous system likes to live in that comfort zone and maybe slightly on the edge. But when we push too far outside of our comfort zone into that overstimulation, our body is really good at pulling it back down into the comfort zone in a healthy way. But when we're pushing it out of that window regularly way too far, that's when we're dysregulating our nervous system, and it can stay stuck in that overstimulated state where we're stuck in that fight or flight mode, very anxious, very on edge, having our adrenaline pumping with the palpitations and the nausea and the shortness of breath. And this really prevents your body from efficiently utilizing all of the nutrients that come from the food that you eat throughout the day. So you can't repair the nervous system. You can't repair the organs in the body. You can't repair the tissues if you're stuck in that fight or flight state. So if you're trying to recover from an acute illness like the cold or the flu, or even a chronic illness like diabetes or an autoimmune condition, pushing too far past your limits and outside that window of tolerance can actually slow down your recovery process and keep you trapped in that fight or flight state. Finally, number 7, we have diets. So the choices that we make in our diets actually have a huge impact on whether we are promoting health and recovery, or if we're causing more damage and stress on our bodies and on our nervous systems. And more stress, as we've talked about, causes our nervous systems to be stuck in that dysregulated state. I'm someone who really advocates for finding balance in life, and that goes for health and stress as well. So making healthy decisions, yet also having time to be a little more laid back and gently introduce stressful situations to your brain and body. And diets are very crucial to life, right? We have to make sure that we're eating the right foods if we want to repair our bodies. But crash diets and fad diets are very counterproductive. So if you've ever been on a fad diet or a crash diet and you really struggled to lose weight, part of this could be because it's stressing your body out so much that it's starting to release too much cortisol. And cortisol is a stress hormone that actually pushes your body into a more dysregulated state and causes it to retain body fat. So often on fad diets and crash diets, they have you limit your carbs and very salty, fatty foods. And what this does is it causes your body to lose a lot of water weight in the beginning. And then you're on this diet for a while and you notice maybe you lost a good bit of weight in the first couple of weeks, but after that, you're hitting this plateau. That's because a lot of it is water weight. So when we've been on a crash diet or a fad diet, something that's very restrictive for too long, our cortisol levels tend to increase. And this can cause binge eating patterns because our body is desperately wanting food to fuel itself. And the higher levels of cortisol trigger that primal part of our brain to want to store extra food and extra fat because it feels like a famine is here. So we need to eat everything in sight because we don't know when we're going to get our next meal. Not only binge eating, but it also causes unhealthy food choices. When you are super stressed, you're tired, you're exhausted, and often fatigued. Do you want to sit there and cook for an hour every day after work? Most people say no, okay? It's easier to grab something out of the fridge, pantry, or freezer that is already pre-prepared even if it has extra additives, chemicals, dyes, etc. The primal part of the brain that triggers the release of cortisol is also responsible for our emotions, and this can cause emotional eating when we are very stressed. The great news is that once you start addressing hormonal imbalances like cortisol through proper nutrition, you're supplying your body with everything that it needs that is required for healing. It's going to shift more easily into that parasympathetic mode and help you keep your cortisol levels more balanced rather than having them too high. So let's do a quick recap on these healthy habits that we need to start and the ones that we need to avoid in order to start stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system and help our body rest and heal. So try to cut out caffeine. Caffeine is going to raise those cortisol levels and keep your nervous system in overdrive. Late nights. Try to get to bed early, try to have a regular sleep schedule, and try to get off the night shift if you can. Doom scrolling is another one. So try limiting your time on social media, maybe getting a timer, or there are apps that can essentially lock your social media once you've reached a certain point of time throughout the day on the app. Scary movies and suspenseful movies. Try switching to something that is going to make you laugh, like a comedy, or something that is pretty lighthearted, something that's not really suspenseful, action-oriented, or scary. Watching the news. This doesn't mean you have to stop watching the news permanently, but maybe cutting back for now. Just maybe limiting yourself to 5 or 10 minutes a day instead of an hour or 2 hours, or maybe just alternating days, like watching the news on Monday, Wednesday, Friday instead of all week long. I promise you're not going to miss much. Pushing past your limits is another one. So try to start cultivating a growth mindset and be gentle with it. Don't push too far outside of your limits and your boundaries. Just try to move low and slow when you're trying to make healthy changes and implement new lifestyle habits. Diets. Try to adopt a healthier diet, a healthier lifestyle. Avoid these fad diets and crash diets that are super restrictive, that are limiting calories, that are limiting nutrients, that are keeping you on very few food groups or food types for several days or several weeks, because it is going to help regulate those cortisol levels in the long run and help regulate your nervous system and pull you out of that fight or flight state. If you're feeling lost and you are looking for guidance on your health journey, feel free to go to my website and schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me. You can do so at drmckenzybrewer.com, drmckenzybrewer.com/schedule. Thanks for tuning in to the Bloom and Well podcast. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite platform. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, happy healing and keep bloomin' well.